Academy, Homeschooling Gracefully, and Clark Family Chronicles. Kind of both. I don't know what I'm doing yet. So anyways, thanks for being here today. Okay, so today's video is all about homeschool organization. And I'm going to try not to bonk my table too much because it's making the camera wobble. Okay, so homeschool organization, specifically organizing our master books curriculum. If you've been around here for a while, you know I love master books. We are now using master books exclusively, and over the years we have tweaked what we've done as far as organization goes, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. We started off doing weekly packets like in poly folders, which was okay, and that especially was helpful for my young kids who were overwhelmed by the whole book being put in front of them. Then we moved to binders like this with sections, you know, for each subject. And you can see my older organization videos to see like detail on these particular methods. But anyways, binders, so it sort of took the weekly packet, like I would tear out of the book what we would do that week and put it in each subject divider, and that worked really well, except for the fact that these get really bulky. We have a smaller table that we all work, I mean, it's a table that fits 6 people around it. We don't have a ton of surface area, and so when all of the kids were in here and everybody had their books like open like this, you know, and we have our little caddy with our pencils and stuff in the middle, it just was really cumbersome, and there was a lot of like opening the binder rings, taking stuff out, closing the binder rings, pinching fingers. That worked, but it had its challenges. Then we went to work boxes, and I left the books intact, and we had work boxes. This worked really great because we could kind of school wherever we wanted. And but then we ran into the same problem of some of my kids feeling very overwhelmed when they see how much they have to do in the book. That has gotten a little easier this year, so that's not as much of a challenge. But leaving the books intact also presented an issue when they wouldn't lay completely flat. Now, some of the bindings are lay flat bindings. Those books worked better, but not every printing has the lay flat binding, and so it just wasn't something we could count on. So that started to be an issue. So we went back to the binders and my clipboard system, where I have clipboards up with their weekly schedule of what they're going to do. And there's a video about that one. I think it's called like Homeschooling Without a Homeschool Room. We now obviously have a homeschool room that we use. And so initially I thought, oh, well, we don't really need the work boxes if we're doing all of our schooling in a schoolroom. And now here we are today, back to work boxes. A little bit different of a system though. So I'm going to share that with you guys because even though we do have a dedicated school room and we do most of our schoolwork in this space, there are times where we move about the house or I separate kids if it's like too crazy or whatever. So it is nice to be able to have a child have all of their individual subjects. So for us, that's math and language in a work box that they can take with them. Since we do history and science together, I haven't put those subjects in their work boxes, although I'm thinking I might put like their worksheets and activities in there, and then I keep the textbooks in my stuff. So for a long time, I have been debating between binders and spiral binding, and I have been trying to justify the cost of a spiral binding like machine. I didn't really like the comb bindings, although I liked that you could add pages in if you needed to. But I just felt like whenever I've used a comb binding, it wouldn't hold up very well. So I really like the spiral binding. I like that you can flip it all the way around. I like that I could go across the top if I wanted to for my lefty. There was just like a lot that I liked about spiral bindings. But one, we live like very rural. So we live very far from anywhere where I could take it to be spiral bound. I know that it's affordable to like go to Staples or Office Max or whatever, have them cut off the binding and spiral it for you. But for us, that means, you know, almost 80 miles. So is it worth it to me to drive all the way out there? Not really. So I wanted to have my own, of course, but that also seemed like a cost that I couldn't really justify. I didn't really want to give up the ability to add pages and shuffle pages around because we're so used to doing that with the binders. And so now this year, I bought this. So this is the, like, me and my big ideas, is the Happy Planner, but it'll say like Mambi on it, like MAMBI. So anyways, I bought this punch. This is the big punch that will fit 8.5 by 11 paper. And I thought, you know what? We're going to do this whole Discbound thing and see what that's all about. So I haven't done next year's curriculum yet. You can see it's like still sitting up here because I wanted to try it on the books that we were using this year just to make sure that I liked it and that it would work. And see kind of, I was a little bit skeptical of if it would like hold together, and the books are holding up fine. So we're going to go ahead and do that with our curriculum next year too. And so I'm just going to kind of go over that process and what we did. So if you're making your own, you're going to need this punch or a Discbound punch. There's a lot of different brands. This one I had a coupon for, so I went with that. And then you'll obviously need discs. I bought the expander discs. Now this could hold a lot more pages, but she was almost done with this book. So this has her My Dictionary pages, and it has her language lessons level 1. Now you can see I let them design little covers, which they had a blast doing. Each of my kids got to do that. They could design a front cover and a back cover, and I just laminated these. I don't have a laminator, and I also didn't want to justify the cost of that. So we did it old school, where I just took the plain clear matte contact paper and cut it to the size and stuck it on there. That is labor intensive, so if you have a laminator, I highly suggest using that. But if you don't, it is possible to do it without. So I had them laminate covers just so they could kind of personalize it and have fun with it. But the thing I love about it is that they can fold it all the way back on itself. We don't take up as much space. A lot of times for some of mine, one in particular who has a hard time with the whole book, all I do is have her take out that day's worth, and she does that. And so these obviously can come in and out. I also really like it because I can add in pages. So if we want to, especially with like language lessons, if I want them to be completing the word shapes worksheets, I can print those off and add them in wherever we are. I don't have to have it already planned ahead of time. If I were to spiral bind it, I would have had to plan out all the extras that we were going to use if I wanted it included in the book. So this gives me the flexibility of not being super prepared ahead of time, because I'm just not. That's not how I am. Okay, so we're really happy with these discs, actually. And this is the expander size. I think I already said that. For like a full workbook, you're going to want this size. I also have some of the classic size, and that would hold like this amount just fine. But this can hold like a lot more than what's on here right now. I'm going to get more in the process of how I put the books together in just a minute. But first I'm going to talk about the work boxes. So I know I've shared about these on the channel before, but they are super helpful. So in the top, these are just the Latch Mate. And actually this is a Latch Mate. Sometimes you can get them like Pen and Gear from Walmart is a lot cheaper than the Latch Mate from Michael's. Or you can get them, I've even gotten one for like $8 at Dollar General. This white one is from Dollar General. So you don't have to spend like the $20 that Michael's charges for the Latch Mate. So you have this top part, and I like to keep stickers in here. The kids put stickers on their assignments when they finish, any sort of flashcards that they have, rulers and things like that, and like their personal pencils and pens that they like to use. I also keep their leveled readers, so they can go ahead and grab whatever they're reading at the time and use that on their own time, like while they're waiting for me or they're in between subjects or whatever. So this is like a box that's full of stuff that they can kind of use themselves without a lot of direction from me. Okay. And then we'll have their books. So obviously she designed her cover, and I left these covers in here so I know, like, you know, which book was what easily. And she also has her dictionary pages in here. So they were pretty close to being done with these courses. when I put this together, but you get the idea. Plus, I really wanted to try it out before I cut up these beautiful books, because you're going to see in a minute how I take off the binding and everything, and you kind of have to destroy the book. So all the books are perforated. Oh, and it's really nice. Have a little handle. Have handle will travel. Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk about the process now. So first you have to prep the book, so you're going to want a few supplies. I used a box cutter and a piece of scrap wood, and that was all I needed to take apart the books. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how I take these books apart using an old teacher's guide, because I already took our books apart. So what you need is a piece of wood or something to cut on. You could also use a cutting mat or a cutting board, and I just had scrap wood and a box cutter. So the first thing that you're going to do is kind of find the middle point, and you're going to cut just straight along this spine. Okay, now it's split apart. Now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to cut this section in half, and then I'm going to flip over to the front section and cut that in half. I found about like 4 sections for each of the main halves. Worked pretty well. Okay, so now I've separated, I have all these chunks. I also decided to cut the front covers off of each of mine so that I could bind them in the books. And you could use a ruler and make it like a nice straight clean line, but that worked pretty well for me. And then you'll have your pieces that kind of just come apart like that. Now this book that I'm demonstrating with isn't perforated, but the master books are. So I would just run along the perforation. So this is not going to be as straight because I don't have a perforation line to go on. But you see, as I'm just cutting along the edge, now these pages come off. And then you take your punch and you take approximately 3 pages, which this is 4. So you take about 3 pages and you line it up. There's a guide on this that will show you where the top and bottom should be. And there you go. And then same thing for this, you could punch it. That one's a little tougher. And then it will just snap into your discs. Before, when I was just taking out a week's worth at a time, I would just use a box cutter and keep the book intact and just take out the pages individually. But this is much faster for this whole disc binding purpose. The laminated covers that we made just really help keep everything together. It just gives it a little bit more stability and keeps the pages from getting messed up. So then when you're putting it together, you're going to want to put the front and back cover first and stick all the discs in. This just gives it a little bit of stability, and it really just helps the process go faster. Otherwise, when you're starting, the discs are all wobbly. Then you'd spend a lot of time punching the papers. So you have to get them all ready. This punch will do a max of 3 sheets. I found with like our laminated covers, it was a little bit thick to go through. I used cardstock and then laminated them. So that was a little, like, you really had to give it some oomph to actually punch all the way through. But it handled 3 sheets of paper at a time totally fine. Actually, probably sometimes I might have done, 4 or 5, maybe even 6. I don't know. Because I was just kind of grabbing. I wasn't like meticulously counting 3 at a time. But I don't advise that you do more than the max because you might break your punch. And it punches a lot smoother with just 3 sheets or less. So I don't think you save any time trying to do more than what it says it can handle. And then I would just take chunks of them, like maybe 10 sheets at a time, and you just pop it in. I did Simply K, Math K, Language 1 and Language 2, and Math 2 and Math 3. And so I put together 6 of these in about 2 evenings and then a little bit of a Saturday morning. Even though they're still getting handed like a whole book, we have the option to take out a page. We have the option to move things around. If you are like in between binders and spiral binding, I would suggest that you check out disc binding because it's really awesome. I like it a lot. It gives me the best of both worlds that I wanted. And so I find it to be awesome. So that is how we are keeping our homeschool organized. That's what we're doing currently and what we will be doing for next year. I'd love to hear how you guys do it. Do you keep your books together? Do you put them in binders, clipboards, spiral? What do you do? Until next time, happy schooling.